Good afternoon, everyone. Dear participants, as you all know about the Innovation Foundation, we belong to a university. It is promoted by a Delhi government. The name of our incubation center, Innovation Foundation. Our university is a women university. We are having different programs at UG, PG, and PhD level pertaining to engineering, computer applications, management, and architecture. And in association with GIZ Germany, we are conducting so many programs, boot camps, mentorship sessions, demo days, workshops, etc. And today, in under the mentorship session, we are having series 14, where we are having two speakers with us. So, first speaker we are having as Shrikant Sinha ji. Shrikant Sinha ji is Delhi University graduate, comes with more than 30 years of multicultural global experience. He has worked with companies and organizations like AppTech Middle East and AppTech Limited as Senior General Manager, South and West India as Director, APEC and MENA as Head Corporate Learning, and NESCOM Foundation as Chief Executive Officer. Presently, he is associated as the Chief Executive Officer at Telangana Academy for Skill and Knowledge, that is TASK, an initiative of Government of Telangana. He has great expertise in leading non-profit organizations, champion of the cause of collaborative CSR, leader in the tech for good space, aims to bridge digital divide and in promoting grassroots innovations. Sinhaji is also associated with IGDTW Convention Foundation since the last 2 years, and as always, it's great to have him again among us. Today, the topic which he will be addressing that is pertaining to the why startup phase, the reasons why startup phase. As you all know that till now we have conducted many mentorship sessions covering all the domains and subdomains of and which comes under the realm of startups. We have done everything starting from the corporate, the functional areas and everything. And we know that the main reason why startup phase that belongs to two things. Number one, at the product time, when you are into the phase of development of the product. And another is on the side of the marketing or when you are launching your product to the market. On the first hand, we are having the opportunities, whether we have recognized the good opportunity, the problem which we are going to address, that shows that we have picked the right opportunity to launch your product into the market. And second thing is this, that the functional areas and the business areas where we are working, that is moving in the right direction or not. Sir, on behalf of Anveshan Foundation, I am thankful to you for giving us time. It's my privilege to welcome you, Sir Shrikantji.
Thank you, Dr. Arora, and thank you very much, Innovation Foundation and Indira Gandhi Delhi Technology University for Women, for having me over to talk about this important topic which entrepreneurs should know. In fact, before I start, I would like to make a disclaimer over here. Of course, I'm not going to talk about two of the most important things, which is the cash, as well as second is mentorship, getting the right kind of guidance, which I'm sure all the people who are part of this program already would be getting from Anveshan Foundation and all your supporting partners. So probably what I'll be talking about is more towards something which is actually common sense, which is understandable by most, but often neglected. So before I start, let's quickly have a look at the Indian startup ecosystem. Of course, we already know that the Indian startup ecosystem is amongst the largest in the world, and of course it is debatable. Some people say it's second, some people say it's third, depends on which resource you're looking at, but definitely it's one of the largest ecosystem in the world. Today we have close to about 50,000 startups, out of which 50 are unicorn. So that's where our startup system is, and these are our statistics from Niti Aayog itself. Now if you look at it, and moving ahead, the plan is to double this by 2025. So the next 4 years, we are looking to double it so that we have 1 lakh startups and about approximately 100 plus unicorns should be there. And that's where today our startup ecosystem is. Moving ahead, let's look at the investment in the sector. As of now, $13.7 billion have been invested in the sector. And if you look at it, 90% of the investments are foreign investments. So if you look at the entire thing that I've spoken above, I think, our startup ecosystem is extremely good, extremely well focused, well funded, etc., everything else. But still our mortality rate is somewhere between the tune of 40 to 50% on an average. If I look at the mortality rate last year, probably it would go up to even 70%. A lot of new startups have come up in the pandemic time, etc. But a lot of startups have collapsed or laid off a lot of people, etc. And thus I'm saying that the mortality rate has gone up to something close to about 70% globally post the pandemic. Having said that, let's look at some of the things which I feel, probably over my 6 years plus of experience of working with entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, being in the corporate world for 26 years before that, working more in an entrepreneurship kind of a role everywhere. Some of the things that I feel, and of course, a lot of global statistics is also available on the same, as to why startups fail or why and how startups can succeed. So we have about half an hour, 40 minutes, Dr. Arora?
45 minutes.
45 minutes, fantastic. I think that should be good enough. So probably what I'll do is quickly take you through the points. And of course, I just have 5 slides as part of my presentation, if you look at it, apart from the intro and the thank you slide. But yes, what I'll do is talk about what are the things which are happening today, which is important for the startups to realize and take it forward. The first is the failure to listen to people, right? I'll take a very simple example. I don't know how many of you have heard, but Hindustan Unilever Limited, quite some years ago, their toothpaste sale had tanked. It had become flat. And everyone was worried what to do, how to push up the sales, etc. And when they were faced with the challenge, they all got together. There was a huddle. They got into a room. There were people from Wharton, Stanford, Harvard, and everyone was cracking their heads, how to bring the sales up. And during the tea break, the tea boy came to serve the tea, etc. And he saw everyone, not paying any attention to the tea. Tea was still lying there, and everyone was busy debating, discussing, talking about things. And he says, what seems to be the problem? So someone, just to humor him, said, the problem is our sales are not going up. We had projected much more sale to happen, but it's not happening. So he thought about it, and after 1 second, he said, sir, can I suggest something? So everyone laughed at him and said, look, what are you talking about? He said, no, sir, I'm a consumer. I use toothpaste. Can I suggest something? And rest is history. All he suggested was, please increase the size of the hole of the toothpaste. The tube size earlier, people would remember, had a very, very narrow hole through which limited amount of toothpaste used to come out. He said, please increase the size. Once you increase the size, normally toothpaste, when you squeeze the tube, toothpaste will come out, but you can't put it back in again, right? And such a simple thing coming from a customer actually helped solve the problem of the sales at HUL. But the thing was very important is that you have to listen to your customer. If you don't listen to your customers when they are trying to tell you something, you are actually, you've got a tunnel vision. You are just looking at what you can do, what you can provide. But try to understand, half of the startups, the fatal flaws that happen for most of the startups is they don't gather useful information from their customers. Even at the stage when you are trying to design something, right, for whomever the target audience is, talk to them, find out what is required by the customer, and then only try to move ahead and see what needs to be done and how it can be done. So that's probably, as per me, the first thing. And as I said, failure to listen, I think it's also important to listen to your internal team. Again, since normally we start the day, by brushing our teeth, and I've already spoken about the toothpaste. So I'll take another example from this industry itself. And I don't know whether you're aware or not, but this is a famous case study that has happened where a toothpaste company's factory, when they were shipping out, the toothpastes to the customers and to the distributors, etc., some of the packages went without the toothpaste tube being inside it. As a result of which, their customers as well as the distributors, etc., their perception of quality, their feedback, etc., was going negative, and they were really getting low in sales. So the CEO thought about it. He got to know the feedback and everyone talking about it. He decided to create a think tank, and think tank said, let's hire an external consultancy, right? Big companies, big money. So they hired an external engineering consulting firm, which came up after 6 months with a brilliant solution, which was a digitally and a precise balance, right? And this balance was so sensitive that any time on the line, an empty box of toothpaste used to come, it used to beep, it used to ring an alarm, and it used to also stop the entire line itself. Fantastic. This solution was implemented. The first week, everything went off well. Second week, third week, everything was going fine now. With $8 billion, 6 months, problem solved. CEO was very, very happy. But then suddenly he thought, why don't I find out, what is the statistics that is coming out from this solution? So he looked at the first week and he looked at the tubes that earlier were having complaints. So same number of tubes were being removed from the supply line, and he found out, yes, it was correlated. But he was shocked to see the second, third, and fourth week figures, because there were 0 tubes being rejected, 0 boxes being rejected. And he was shocked. He got his engineers to check the whole system. He thought something going wrong in the system. Let me try to solve it. Where the problem is? Engineers said, no, the supply line is working fine. Everything is going on fine. The balance is also fine. Everything is working. So he was wondering, hua kya hai? So he decided to himself go down to the floor. And he walked to this place where this precision balance was kept. And he saw just before the precision balance, there was a $20 desktop fan kept over there. And what this fan used to do is, the minute on the supply line, an empty box used to come, even before it went to the precision balance, it used to blow it off the supply line itself. So he asked, who put this fan? So then it was found out that the person from maintenance, for the first week, he got so fed up coming and switching off and removing the box and starting the line again, he decided to put that fan. Imagine, for a problem which could have been solved by just $20, $8 million was spent by that toothpaste company. So failure to listening is not only towards your external customers, but also listen to your team. Look for a solution within the team itself. The second reason which I feel a lot of people start up, is due to the wrong reason. I came across someone who said, the reason why I started is because then mujhe kisi ke sunna nahi padega. I will be my own boss. I will be able to decide what time I want to come. I'll decide what time I want to go, and so on and so forth. So his basic reason why he wanted to become a startup was absolutely wrong. But little did he realize that people who are choosing to start a startup for these kind of frivolous motivations or secondary motivations, they will burn out very, very soon. In fact, Zenefits was one of the organizations which was very well invested, very well known. It was into corporate healthcare, insurance related cloud-based company. but they ran out of business. And one of the reason was when the CEO of Zenefits was asked about the reason why his company failed. All he was able to say is, Parker Carnard said that, I think people are unprepared for how hard and awful it is going to be start a company. It is your company, it's your money, it is your idea, it is your thing. And that is the reason you will have to put not only your 10%, 20%, but 150, 200%. You will have to be there. Anything goes right, anything goes wrong, you have to be there. So in case someone is wanting to do this just because of this kind of a reason, then I think probably startup is not the world for you. You should look at some other place. Another thing is, you should, when people ask me, what kind of idea should I start up with, or what should we do to have a startup? I think the biggest thing is, look at what is the thing that doesn't let you sleep at night. And I'm not talking about boyfriend, girlfriend, etc. What I'm talking about, plain simple, is an idea, a problem that doesn't permit you to sleep at night. वो ऐसी कौन सी problem है which you are want, you know that that's a problem. So many people are facing that problem. How can you solve that problem? If you are able to put your mind and try to solve that problem because you have got divine discontent, kuch bhi kar lo, I want to solve this problem, I will do it, I have to solve this problem. It's only then that you will be able to understand and then choose the right reason for starting a startup. I think this is very, very important. So please, you might be coming across multiple problems, but then what is the problem that you want to solve? Try to think about it. Try to look at the problem itself. Is it really giving you sleepless night? How can you solve it? What all do you need for it? And as Dr. Arora said right in the beginning, you have to keep everything into mind before you start looking at it. I hope I'm not going too fast or too slow, Dr. Arora.
No, sir, it's perfectly fine, sir.
Okay, great, fine. So I will continue with this, and probably what I'm also saying is the reverse also works true. While I'm saying why startups fail, I'm also taking examples of how positive things are happening. How can you change things to make it more positive? So reasons as well as stories of where successes have been found out. So you want to call this presentation as why startups fail or why startups succeed. It's entirely up to the audience. But looking at the next reason is purely a very simple one. Lack of knowledge or passion for that particular thing. If you have come up with a medical device, if you are not aware of have enough knowledge about the medical domain and medical field, you might have a very good product, everything would be great, but then of course you will run out of steam. You will not be able to put your product out there in the market because of just one simple reason, which is you will not have enough knowledge, and that's why your idea might be very good, but you'll not be able to do it. Second is, of course, as I said, passion. Halfway through, you think that, look, I did this, but it did not work. So what do I do? In that kind of a case, fail hard, fail fast, but then get up on your feet again. It has been said multiple times by multiple people, right? And I'm just repeating it. A failure is a learning. And that is how it should be treated. So please ensure that you continue with your passion. Your passion has to be there. If you have a lack of passion for a domain or lack of knowledge for a domain, then please ensure that you are either exiting that particular domain very fast and move to something else where your ideas can be much more suited, much more effective. And that is where you will need to focus on. So please, once you have decided that you are going into a particular domain, try to get as much information, as much knowledge about that domain, and be passionate about it. You must have I'm not saying that you must be from engineering background, etc. What I'm saying is you must have an engineer's mindset. Here also, I'll be taking an example which is very unique, and of course, nowadays it has no relevance, but I think it is important for people to understand. Now, imagine if you're working for an automobile company, right? And you get a feedback, a customer complaint, which says your car doesn't like vanilla ice cream. What will be your first reaction to it? It'll be, what is he talking about? Why will my car not like an ice cream? Correct? And this is exactly what happened with General Motors. General Motors got a complaint month after month, week after week, month after month, they got a complaint saying that your car doesn't like this ice cream. And typically, the customer service support center never paid any attention to it, kept on throwing this complaint till finally the person got fed up and wrote to the president of the company and said, I don't know why, but your car doesn't like vanilla ice cream. So they tried to find out what he was saying. And the thing was like this. There was a person in the customer complaint, the engineering head was assigned this thing as a punishment. He had to prove himself. So he was given this thing that, okay, you are saying that you have solutions for all problems, solve this problem. And he got to see this mail which said, every day in the evening after our dinner, sorry, every week after dinner, our family goes out to the nearest supermarket to have ice creams. But we have seen that whenever the family decides to have vanilla ice cream, your car doesn't start. But if we are supposed to have either butterscotch or some other ice cream flavors, then your car starts and we are able to come home. So this person was very, he was confused. He said, no, let me actually go that and do it. He went along with the family and sure enough, 1 week he went, they had vanilla ice cream, car did not start. Second week they had Black Forest, the car started. Third week they had butterscotch, car started. So what this person started doing was, he could not believe, and he, of course, coming from a scientific and an engineer's mindset, he tried to dissect the problem. And he started noting down various things. And then it was found out that the time taken to go and fetch the vanilla ice cream, because it was kept near the billing counter, was less than the time taken to pick up the other flavors of the ice creams which are kept at the back of the store in the refrigerator section. And that is why there was a condition which was called as internal gas locking. So this was a phenomenon which used to happen in your combustion engines, and this was an internal gas lock. So when the person used to come before, that time the gas was being formed in the piston and the gas chamber, because of which the car would not start. So that's where a problem was solved. Hence, my thing is, don't take anything on face value. Get enough knowledge, have an engineer's mindset, try to dissect it. I'm sure you would have heard about the Japanese philosophy of 5 whys. Always put the 5 whys over there. Why did this happen? Where did this happen? When did this happen? What happened? The 5 whys are very, very important. So just ensure that you are able to check these things as to what happened and why did it happen, and then come up with a solution with the W's along with it. So that's where try to break up the problem that you're facing. Another major reason why startups fail is a product without a business model. Now, if you look at it, there are a whole lot of people, that are there outside who have got a great technology. Fantastic technology is there, everything is there. And that's the reason why today, if you look at technology and of course, as part of task, we have been running and catering to more than 1,000 technology-based startups, but whenever I meet them, I always find that they have got a great technology. They have put everything there together. They've got bells and whistles over there. Everything is there. But actually, they didn't even look at, whether there was a problem that needed to be solved, which is most important. So they have to understand that what is the problem to be solved. Second thing is, if you don't have a robust business model, right? Or for example, if someone decides to, let's say I'm starting, let's say I'm starting something similar to Wow Momos, right? Which is a chain which has been invested by India Angel Networks, and it is a very well-known startup today. And it is one of the big ideas, which is franchising of momos across India. Wow Momos. I'm sure some of you would have seen it in Delhi also, and Gurgaon, of course, there are outlets and so on and so forth. So if, let us assume that they would have said, okay, I'm only going to use emails to reach out to my customer, which is one single channel to reach out to customers, do you think they would have reached where they are today?
No, sir. No, not at all.
Sorry?
No, not at all, sir. You are
Not
saying
at all. Exactly. And that's the reason, getting wedded to a single channel or finding more ways to make money at scale. How do you scale up your idea? Unless and until you are able to show how you can scale up your ideas, the investors who have invested in you, they will become hesitant, and you will not be able to get more money from them to move ahead. Of course, talking about business models, I think if we look into the details of it, I'm sure you'll be covering it as part of your course. And Dr. Arora also alluded to it right in the beginning of this session. We can talk about business models itself for hours, but what is important is that getting the right business model, getting the right way to promote it. And somewhere we are caught up with, a disruptive innovation mindset. If you talk to various people also, they say, look, let me look at a disruptive model. How can I disrupt the industry? How can I create something which is really unique? But the point I'm coming from is that incremental innovation is good enough. Why do you need to disrupt the industry? Why do you need to, put all bells, whistles, everything, and try to make your product so complex while a simple thing would work? Let me take two very quick examples of, of not only entrepreneurs, but I'm talking about innovation itself over here. And when we talk about innovation, it is quite simple. Two examples. One, along when I was the CEO of NASSCOM Foundation, I used to also work very closely on our own program, which was NASSCOM Social Innovation Forum. Along with, I was associated with KSM, which is the Kerala Startup Mission. Kerala Startup Mission was recognizing the work done by a 9th standard student, which is very simple. The problem statement for him was, in his village, he saw every person over there with a bent back, only to realize that, these people are carrying buckets in both their hands full of rubber sap. So the rubber comes out as some kind of a liquid formed from the trees, the bark of the tree, the rubber tree, which is collected in these baskets, in this bucket, sorry. And both of the people carry two buckets in their hand, which are heavy, because of which they're typically over years, they got a bent back. What this boy did was, when he came to the city, he saw the IT folks carry a backpack. All he did was redesign those buckets into cylinders so that two could be kept in a backpack and carried by the people in their back. Was this a disruptive solution? No. It was an incremental solution, but did it suffice? Yes, it solved the problem. I'll take another very simple example of a girl from Telangana itself who has created a very simple lemon sorter. You know what she has done? She has tied two sticks on one end with a string, kept it on a bucket which is slightly higher, kept 3 utensils, 3 bhagonas. She has kept bhagonas underneath it and created a small wedge between those 2 sticks. So the minute, due to gravity, she keeps the lemon over there and rolls it down. The place where the size of the lemon is met immediately drops down into that particular vessel. Imagine what a simple solution. It is powered by gravity. It doesn't require anything. You can change the size of the thing and sort anything, and it gets you better value in the market. In the market, if you are able to sort your lemons properly, then you can sell it for 2 rupees, 3 rupees, 5 rupees, 7 rupees, as per the size. So imagine how a simple solution can solve problem. It need not be that you need to have, a solar powered machine on which you put a tray full of lemons and you have got sorters over there and you have sieves and this whole thing costs 15,000. Not required. So you should be able to come up with a mindset which solves the problem. It might be incremental or it might be disruptive. It really doesn't matter till the time the problem is solved. Yeah, so sorry, okay. Moving on to the next one, a very important thing. And I'll also take an example over here. Not having the right team. Sometimes when you look at the founders themselves, right? Because it's their idea, they're wedded to it. They try to do it their way. And as a result of which, the typical statements which are made post that thing is, I wish I had a CFO, I wish I had a CTO when I started things. And that's typically what is heard, because you need a diverse team. You don't need people with the same skill sets. And there are tools available today where you can take a prometric kind of a test which will tell you, as an entrepreneur, what are the skills that you are having? Are you good in ideating? Are you good in marketing? Are you good in consulting? Are you good with finances? And in case you are able to identify what your skill sets are, the best would be to partner with someone which has a complementary skill set. In fact, a couple of years ago, when we started a Thinkubator at Indira Gandhi Delhi Technology University for Women, and one of the discussions that we had with Dr. Sharma, Dr. Arora and team was that along with one technology girl, we should have another person from either arts or commerce or some other field, so that they are able to complement each other and create a winning combination, which is again one of the reasons why startups fail, because you look at it from a very, very myopic view. Having different kind of people will also help you provide more checks and balances, ensuring that you're able to see where business and technology decisions have to be made. Because you would like to implement the best technology, being from a BTech or an MTech or an MBA, you would like to use the best technology, but is the best technology the best solution? And that is where, Nowser's founder, he wrote, and this is, I'll also be sharing a link where you can see the startups that failed in 2020 globally, some of the topmost. What were the reasons why they failed? I will share that link with you later on. But if you see Nowser's founder's note, he said, this brings me back to the underlying problem. I didn't have a partner to balance me out and provide sanity checks for business and technology decisions that I made. And that's typically what happens. When you are the founder, when you are running your own startup, it is yours. You need to move out of the single thing and try to broaden and get the right team in place. A team who is hungry, who understands the startup culture and is able to contribute positively to your your entire philosophy and your product, etc. And that's how things have to be done. Moving to the next one, of course, I think we have touched on it, but I think this is the biggest one, tackling problems that are interesting to solve rather than having a market need. This is, and if you look at the global statistics, probably 42% of the organizations that fail, the number one reason for failure is this, that there is no great market need. I'll take a typical example. When I was with NASCOM Foundation and we were doing the jury rounds for one of the social startups that had come to us at that time, was solving a problem which is a real problem in most of the metros. I'm sure in Delhi, Bangalore, this was a company from Bangalore, and they have come up with a brilliant solution, which was an IoT sensor-based solution, which could be installed on your water tanks, which would give you an early warning of when water will come in your taps, right? So this is the Kaveri water which is being supplied to the households in Bangalore, the taps. So people don't know what time it is coming. It could come at 4 o'clock in the morning or 9 o'clock at night. It could come anytime. So how do you ensure that you know what it is? So they put all these things, etc., together, and they created a brilliant device for 65,000 rupees. How many people would have wanted to purchase it? Hardly any, right? So the market need was not there. The technology was great. They had put everything fine. Everything was good. But then there was no need for it. And that is where the problem happens. And that is why most of the startups fail. Because all the solution required was giving the person a mobile phone, which our society did when I was in Bangalore, to the person who used to be switching on the pump at the at the central pump office. So once he used to switch it on, he used to call up our security, who used to inform all the apartments saying water is going to come in 10 minutes. All it required was one. At that time, it used to be the Nokia, 1,000 rupees, 1,100 rupees phone. I don't know what it was called. I forget the name, but that is all that was required, and a geo connection. That's all. Imagine 65,000 rupees, putting all the bells and whistles, putting all technology over there. Obviously, that startup would have failed. Moving on further, most of the people are looking at a solution today. Friends, whenever you have a startup, whenever you come up with your product or services, please see how it is going to evolve in the next 2 to 5 years. If you don't have that kind of a foresight, if you don't have enough knowledge about that sector, obviously you will not be able to say how the things would move ahead. Of course, when everyone talks about Vision 2020, I'm sure everyone across, even the top Fortune 500 people, would have got that Vision 2020 wrong. No one was predicting, this kind would happen. And today we are living in what we call as a VUCA world, which is very volatile. It is uncertain. It's ambiguous, and that's how it is. And it's, of course, it's complex. So you can't predict today, but at least see how your thing is going to evolve. How do you scale up? Once you scale up, what will be the shape and size of your product? How would it actually move? What all things you'll be adding as a feature? To start with, you can launch a product with, which is good enough, but then you need to start incorporating the feedback. You need to read the market. You need to understand your competition. Because initially you could get a first mover's advantage, but then competition is going to catch up. You will have to, face competition. You'll have to, for example, there was this organization which tried competing, and Uber entered the market. And once Uber entered the market, it became quite difficult for them to actually compete with Uber. As a result of which, they were not only able to, Uber had deeper pockets, and they were able to overtake. Uber overtook smart cars and actually got the things delivered in a much better fashion. Sorry. They delivered it in a much better fashion. Thus, smart cars were actually ran out of business itself. So you need to understand how your product and service is going to evolve over a time period of 2 to 5 years minimum, if not more. The next point is government policies and their implications. And here, I'm not talking about the various policies that are existing about investments, about license Raj and anything else, but I'm talking about something which was, taking an example, Blue Smart. I don't know how many of you have heard about this organization. A brilliant concept. Blue Smart was smart luggage. So your luggage had all kinds of things. It would come to you. It would automatically beep once it comes on the belt. It used to, a lot of features were rolled into it. And it was the hottest selling product over there in 2017 in US, etc. But in 2018, most of the airlines enforced a policy saying that all travelers have to remove lithium-ion batteries from their checked-in luggage. If you understand now why, whenever you're traveling by any airlines, they will ask you to they'll check up whether you've got a laptop inside, do you have a power bank inside, right? The reason was that the airlines enforced a policy asking them to remove all lithium-ion batteries from the checked-in luggage. Now here you had a suitcase which was powered by a lithium-ion battery, which was having the connectivity to your phone, and it was a smart suitcase. The minute this policy changed, Blue Smart ran out of business and shut down in 2018. So you have to be aware about the government policy, their implications. Could they have done things differently? Today, if we take it as an exercise, what could you have done differently so that Blue Smart wouldn't have collapsed? You can come up with different solutions, which you can talk about, but that's where your business model has to understand and cater to changing policies and understand implications, change your designs, etc. For example, in India today, I'm also very passionate about the cause, and probably I'll be happy to know if some of you are looking at assistive technologies and moving into that field. Because today, helping persons with disabilities who are really, really underserved, it's very, very important for us. While we are sending vaccines to all neighboring countries, if we are not able to take care of our own persons with disabilities, I think then it doesn't do well for us. So what I would like to mention over here is, there are policies, there is accessibility, campaign going on. There is a Swamanya Bharat thing going on, but we need to understand the various policies that are surrounding that and design devices as per that. For example, it's easy to say, get them jobs. Yes, industry is ready to give them jobs, but how do they travel to their jobs? How many of our buses today are disabled friendly? Cabs. So there was this cab in service along with Emphasis and their CSR leader of those days, Minu Bambani, worked with fast cabs and tried to create a model where disabled people could reach their office. But then the RTA, Road Transport Authority, in any modification, smallest modifications you do to the cars, It is not accepted by them. So you have to ensure that what are the policies and what implications it would have. So they actually had to change the design.
Right, sir.
Of course, I think Dr. Arora mentioned about this right in the beginning itself. Poor marketing. It's most important to understand who your customers are. Who's your target audience? Are you creating a product for the right target audience? If you know your target audience, how are you going to get to them? How do you get their attention? Would it be through email? Should it be phone? Should it be posters? Should it be talking to people? Should it be doing group discussions? Should it be word of mouth? How would you get their attention? And once you have got their attention, how do you convert them to leads? And once they have become leads, how can they become ultimately your customers? I think this is one of the most important business skills, right?
Right.
And it was also agreed in various postmortems that were done that inability to market was a common failure, especially amongst founders who like to code and build products. In fact, during my tenure also with NASCOM Foundation and others, I've seen that multiple times, and I'm sure Dr. Arora, through your various batches, you would also realize the people are happy coding. You give them a computer, you put them in a room, give them a problem, they will start coding or they will build products. But jahan jaake market karna hai, going and trying to sell it out, it is impossible. And that is where a couple of years ago, and I don't know how many of you, probably I think you must be, all of the participants might be kids at that time, but there was this brilliant show many years ago, maybe more than 2 decades ago, which was called as Business Bajigars. This was a show where we had some of the leading lights of the industry at that time, along with Dr. Anil Gupta of IIM Ahmedabad, co-founder of Honeybee Networks, and Gyan, and one of the persons who is a leader in social and rural innovation, actually used to give challenges. They used to give 100 rupees to a businessman's son, and he had to sell Bhel Puri in Bombay, or create a kiosk somewhere, or market an idea. And this show was called Business Bajikar. The basic concept was, how do you remove the fear of marketing, selling a particular product? And not even going into channels and deciding what is the right audience, way of getting to the channels, etc. If the person who is the developer, again, it brings me back to the point of the team. If you are not good in marketing, don't try to do it. Hire someone, get a co-founder if required. While on the point of co-founder, I think one more thing which I have got to know interacting with a lot of angel networks and VCs, etc., is that typically if you are a single owner startup, VCs would be slightly reluctant to fund you. If you are more than 4, again, they'll be slightly reluctant to fund you. Therefore, please choose your partners very carefully. 2 to 4 is ideal combination that you could go. I'm not saying that if you are 5 or 1 only, you would not get funded. Please don't take me wrong. But typically, that's where funding happens. And that's where things happen. So try to ensure that if you lack marketing knowledge, or you're hesitant in marketing, then please go ahead and get someone who is an expert, either as part of your co-founders or part of your team. Okay, I think that's probably what. I think I have taken my time and finished what I needed to talk about in terms of the various things which, apart from the typical thing about cash availability, about mentoring, etc. Something which, of course, as I said, and I also make this disclaimer at the end, all what I've spoken about is not rocket science.
Right.
These are very obvious things, but we have seen organizations collapse because of these reasons. And as I said, here is the link, uh, techcrunch.com 2012-22. Remember startups we lost in 2020. So some of you who are interested to also have a look at why startups failed last year, some of the topmost startups, why did they collapse? It'll be interesting read for you to go through the case studies of the top startups we lost, which is a global study. So on that note, I would like to thank you all for a very attentive listening, of course, and it
Thank
was a one-sided thing so far,
Mhm.
and it was more of, as I call it in the earlier days, a sage on the stage. So I was trying to give you gyan, but now it's time for reverse mentoring and discussion. So happy to have any questions. In
Great
case
session.
you want to be in touch with me later on, uh, this is my email ID, sorry, co_task at telangana.gov.in. Happy to hear from you. And
Great session, sir. You have covered all the aspects. This generally people are unaware about it before starting any startup, and they take some assignments, venture development assignments. But yes, these things are also very important. So before we go for question answer round, I just wrap up with or give the crux of the today's session. The
sure.
first thing what Shrikant ji was saying that was about the recognition of the exact problem, the problem which you are going to solve. That problem should be required some solution from the market. That is problem is linked with the market, and market is also ready to accept those kind of products which are going to solve such kind of problem. As Shrikant ji was just explaining the requirement of some device that when the water will come. The second point was about the thinking heads. Yes, six kind of thinking heads are very important because we need a team where the amalgamation of all the possible thinkings could be there. Means an engineer person is having a person from commerce background or from arts background. This is also very important. And team building is very important because from the incubators point of view or from the investors point of view, whenever we talk to different type of investors, investor says that 50% we are investing in a business idea, but 50% basically we are investing, and that who is the basically people who are the promoter. So that is also very important. Yes, when we go for the proper feasibility viability test, legal aspect which is very important, that Miss Ambani, she has started a venture without knowing that whether it will be accepted by the legality or not. Many times we go for a high type of solutions or disruptive type of problems, innovations and businesses, but many times we see that that could be have been solved through some incremental solution. Business models also, he was talking about that right business model or hybrid type of business model which is required when you are going to have your own startup. So this was the background of today's session. So I now request all the audience that if they have any question, they can write their question in the chat box, and they can also mute and unmute themselves, and they can put their questions.
Good evening, sir. I had a question.
Yeah, Shakti.
So I wanted to know, there was this one query. You said that you have some problem that you feel a lot for it and you should work on that. And you also said that you need to be really good in that particular field. So, for example, if I feel for some problem, like I feel something related to medical health, like, yeah, this is something that I need to solve, but I am not working in that field. So how should I work on that?
So the first is, look, if it is a burning desire of yours and you want to solve that problem, right? I think probably what you would start by doing is, why do you think that problem is troubling you, right? You will try to find out why that problem is troubling you. Then you will try to see, is it actually a problem that is only troubling me, or is it troubling more and more people? If it is troubling me, then I need a solution for myself. But if it is troubling more people, you will get more information about it, right? The more information you get about it, the more passionate you will become about that problem. And this entire solutioning will be driven by a problem itself. If you have understood where the problem is, right, then you can go and talk to experts, find out that probably in your limited knowledge, that problem could exist, but are the experts also facing a problem on that? If the experts are facing a problem, you can try to understand what kind of solutions could be there. You could discuss with them that could this help? Would this help? So that's how typically you will need to build in the entire thing and then take it forward. Of course, you'll have to do enough reading. You will see there is no shortcut for knowledge. You will have to gain knowledge on that subject. Get enough to understand that how can that your technology or whatever you're trying to solve, how would actually that be implemented in real life? I take a very simple example and I talk about attitudes, right? If someone cannot stand the sight of blood, should he or she go for a medical profession or to army? No. Similarly, over here, you will need to understand what are the nuances in that field. Try to understand, apart from the problem that is visible, it's typically like an iceberg, only the top is visible, but the problem would actually lie beneath the water. You will need to understand the problem in its totality, and then you should come at a solution. So you will have to gain knowledge. Hope I answered your question.
Yeah, definitely. So thanks a lot.
You're
So
welcome.
I had another question. So should
Sure.
I
Yeah,
go
please,
for it?
please, please, Kshitija, please, yeah.
Yeah, please
Yeah,
go ahead.
sure. So this is one particular scenario wherein if I'm working on on my product and it took a bit long and someone else came up with the same idea and launched a similar product in the market. So what should I do? Like, should I keep on working on it, or like what should I do?
Okay, a very good and important question. See, typically what will happen is, and this is a real life, right? Look, there are problems are there. See, there are two things. One is, if someone else has come up with a solution, is your solution and his solution the same, or do you have a USP? Right? Are you better in marketing that product than him or her? Right? Or that company, organization, whatever it might be. What is your USP? What is your take? How do you take it to the market? How can you gain customers? How can you gain traction? That is what you need to understand. If it is same, let's say we do a comparison and worst case scenario, it is same. It's the same product, same technology, same marketing, everything. Then you will have to re-innovate. You will have to come up with something different, something which differentiates you than the other person. And you will have to do it quickly. Please understand, as you said, if both have come up with the market with the same product at the same time, or he has beat you to it, or she has beat you to it, then you'll need to innovate quickly, come up with more advancements of it much faster. See, it's a situation of a typical jungle. You know that, right? The cheetah has to outrun the gazelle, and the gazelle has to outrun the cheetah to survive. And that's where it is. But yes, you will need to come up with certain USPs. Easiest is do a comparison, see where you are, and try to come up with something which is not which will help. It could be how do you say, a delight factor, right? I'll take a typical example, and this is an example which I have seen it firsthand. There was this excellent friend of mine, and I don't know how many of you, has anyone heard about this organization called bababazar.com? Anyone? Can I see a show of hands or a chat saying yes or something? bababazar.com? bababazar.com was the first e-commerce startup in 1998-99, which started selling vegetables in Delhi over the web, right? So the founder of that is a serial entrepreneur, and he was discussing with someone about pricing, and he then decided to come up with a unique model. And this is called as anarkali chicken. Butter chicken, organically, and everything was used to create that butter chicken, serving 2 people, right, which used to come packed in a wonderful box, etc., etc. Now every hotel, every restaurant sells butter chicken, right? But what IB Saxena did, Iran Bharat Saxena as his name is, he created this anarkali chicken which was there, which was selling at 6,500, and it was a most sought of product. And he did it only to prove to the market that yes, if you are able to convey your value proposition and you deliver quality and understand your target audience. So all these film stars, etc., used to rave about it. And he did it just for 2 years and he wound it up. So you have to understand what your target audience is. People might be having the same product, but if you are able to reach to your target audience and create your, the impression of your product much better in their minds than the others, then I think you definitely are able to capture a market share. Please understand, you have to capture mind share first before you capture market share.
Right.
That made sense. Thanks a lot, sir.
Most welcome.
Shrikantji, if I can ask one question.
Please.
Actually, my concern is like this, that in the initial your slides, you were saying that today we are having more than 50,000 startups. And in last 6 years, the journey has gone from 3,000 to 50,000. And at the same time, the mortality rate is also high and it is being higher and higher. The unicorns are only 0.1%, that is 50 out of 50,000.
Correct.
From the government point of view, or as we say that startup and skills, these are the basically the root of Indian youth in coming days, uh, because the population of our country is also huge. So what do you think that whether it is really going to have an impact, or what is the future of these startups and all these things?
A very interesting question. I would like to step back, and probably some of the professors who are there with me would agree to this. When I was growing up, we used to play with something called Mechano. Then it became mechanics. Then Lego came into picture, where you could build blocks and create things. But now it has become let go. Half of the people today are using only their mobile phones and playing games on that. We are not creating anything with our own hand. We need to get the culture back of doing things. Atal Innovation Mission is doing a great job in creating that culture of innovation, creation, etc. I think it'll take some time for us to move in that direction, but we need to ensure that such things are inculcated. In fact, I'm extremely appreciative of the efforts put in by Indira Gandhi Delhi Technology University for Women when we set up the Thinkubator at that time itself, and Innovation Foundation. So today, if you look at it, there are over 300 plus incubators within India, right? And these incubators are playing a huge role. But what is important is that grassroots innovations also has to take care. We have, if I look at Telangana itself, our ecosystem is probably one of the most robust ecosystems in the country itself, and probably envy of the world also. We have a tea hub, which has been there for more than 5 years, and more than 2,000 startups are getting incubated over there year on year, and so on and so forth. We have something called as VHub. VHub is a special woman entrepreneur. Even if you have an idea, not an MVP, but even if you have an idea, you can become part of that journey and actually become a successful entrepreneur, right? Then third, we have got something called as T-Works. Now, which is very important, because you might have a great idea, but you have to create a prototype. How will you actually do it? Today, thanks to additive manufacturing, 3D printing technologies, etc., are available through which you can create it. But here we have got more than 1,000 kind of equipments which will help you create your own prototype without much of investments, right? So fourth is, of course, task. Task is into creation of an entrepreneurial mindset. So right now we are running a program where more than 816 rural youth underwent an entrepreneurship orientation program to identify whether, because everyone wants, see, in India, the biggest problem is bhed chal, right? If my neighbor is doing it, I should also do it. But what is the reason? What is the reason why you want to do it? What is the cause? What is the problem you want to solve? We are fortunate in India that you step out of your room itself, you'll find so many problems for solutions. That has to be inculcated, that how to find these solutions. Design thinking approach has to be taught right from school onwards. And that is where we'll be able to do it. Having said that, I think with the pandemic, it is most important that we are able to encourage the youth to think differently, to participate in these kind of things. Hackathons is a great way of gaining more and more knowledge. Couple of years ago, if I would have told you that you could implement a blockchain in a dairy so that every cow that gives milk, using QR code at every step, using a blockchain, you can find out the milk that you're drinking today morning, whether the cow has been inoculated or not. You would not have realized it. You would have said, "Kyun mazak kar rahe?" But these are realities today. So it will be important for everyone to support it. And today, if you look at it, as I said in the beginning, 90% of these startups are being funded by foreign entities. It's important that there have to be processes within our government itself. For example, government of Telangana has given a policy where they encourage startups. In fact, the chief secretary recently held a meeting of all departments where entrepreneurs were exposed to them. And they said, okay, what are you doing? Can this be implemented in my department? So the 5 years norm of purchase, etc., and everything else are not going to encourage entrepreneurship. We have to come up with entrepreneur-friendly policies. Then only things could change.
Right, sir. Yeah. Any other question from the attendees?
Sorry, I don't know that one. They are just for sure. Yes.
In case some people are shy to ask, they can even type it in the chat.
Sir, one question is from Shubhangi: how to scale your startup? Not definitely, it is a case-to-case basis.
Yes.
This type of question. That what is your startup?
Yeah.
Please, sir. Please.
Shubhangi, the first thing is as I said, if I'm assuming that you already have an MVP and you have got a prototype and you've created something which is a product or a service which is already existing, right? Now, to scale it up, the very first thing is you'll have to do a deep dive with the market itself. You'll have to understand that what the product that you have got, what is the consumption capacity of people for it? Is it something which is a replenishable product, or is it something, what is the life cycle of your product? All these things will have to be seen. For example, I took the thing of the toothpaste, right? How do you scale that? Very simple. Another example I can take, you can create a fantastic vada pav shop, in Bombay. Most of the people send brilliant vada pav. But just because you are known in your vicinity, if you move to a third country, would you be able to sell the vada pav there also or not? So you have to understand the markets. You'll have to understand the group which is going to be your consumers over there. Your target audience is most important. Then you'll have to also understand what should be a market penetration strategy. What should be a scale-up strategy? Should you go into a franchising model? Should you go, do it yourself and do things? For example, when I was working with Aptech or Apple Computer Education, as it was known in those days, we had our own centers. But then we decided to expand. We adopted a franchise strategy. And that franchise strategy was so phenomenal that at one time, Aptech had more than 3,500 plus centers globally. So you have to decide how you need to do it. And as Dr. Arora rightly said, it'll depend on your product or service, how to scale it up. So if you would like to mention what product it is, then probably we might try to, endeavor to give some kind of suggestion. Of course, time will not be enough to talk about a complete strategy, but at least something we will be able to tell about. So
Shivangi, actually, depending upon the product, now you go for a business model. And
correct.
what the sir is saying, the franchisee model, it comes under partners centric business model. So yeah, many times we can only suggest only after knowing your product and your business. Sir, another one question is there. Yeah, she's
Mental health
continuing with
services
the.
and well-being. Okay, it's an app to provide mental health services and well-being. I think today this is a major thing, especially in the pandemic time. If this is something which is really good, then you'll be able to quite scale it up quite easily, because today everyone, in fact, if a recent survey was done by McKinsey, and one of the things where corporates are focusing is on the mental well-being of their people, because of the pandemic. A lot of people have lost their near and dear ones. A lot of people have undergone troubles. A lot of jobs have been lost, and so on and so forth. So probably this is the right time. So timing is perfect for you. Now, what kind of things you are providing on it, is it, it'll depend on that as to how you need to scale it up. But do drop me a mail in case I can be of any help. I'll be happy to do that.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Sir, one last question, sir. If questions are not there from the participants, sir, as a mentor, what the problem I face many times that young startups means startups started by young people of my university or maybe some other universities, but those who are either students or scholars, and they are whenever they start their business, psychologically they are very much vested with their business idea. And many times they are also consulting with number of mentors, more than 5, 6, 7, 8 mentors together. So it becomes some kind of environment where they are not ready to listen basically, because they are too much. They are just having their startup just like their babies, and it is fine also. It is good also. So they don't see the problems which are associated with the problem they are going to address, or maybe with the products which they are having. So how can we get means our things to them? Means we can how can we convince them?
A very good question. Of course, I've answered a part of it right in the beginning. And I would like to mention only one thing. God has given us one mouth and 2 ears. And 2 years have been given so that we listen. And look, there's a proverb which says, Guru Gobind dono khade, kake lagu pair, balihari Guru aapne, Gobind diyo milai. Right? So the guru or the mentor always have been given the status of more than a god itself. And for young startups, I understand you are wedded to your idea, to your problem, but what you should do is definitely listen to others. Listen to the various mentors. Of course, there are possible, and always see one thing more, which I would like to also tell the mentors, and this is my humble submission to them, having mentored people myself, is that we should not tell them a solution, but let's guide them, let's cajole them, let's give them a nudge so that they are able to discover the solution on their own. So we will have to help them as mentors with information that we have, share best practices that we have, talk about all these things so that they can, of course, let them not walk into a blind hole. They should not walk into a blind hole. We will need to guide them from that, but at the same time, let's not be prescriptive in our solutions. Let's be more recommendation oriented in our solutions. So as mentors, it will be on us to ensure that there is an idea that is budding. We want to also nurture this idea. If a gardener tries to pull a fruit from the root, it will never happen. The fruit will take its own time. It has to grow the way it is. And That's how it is. So we have to nurture them, and that's where it'll play a huge part. Of course, the entrepreneurs, the young budding success entrepreneurs will also need to realize that in case a mentor is saying that this may not work or this could not work in the current situation, is due to his or her experience. And in case another thing, if the market tells you the same thing, please understand where they are coming from. The 65,000 water solution that I spoke about, those people are very, very adamant when they came to meet us. They thought that they have got the best solution there. But the market said otherwise. Market said, no, your price points don't match. Your solution is not required. There is a need, yes, but at not this cost. This is not the value proposition that we are ready to face. And that's where the thing had to be changed. So if you have to fail, fail fast, fail hard, get up again and start working again. And that's what it is. And that's where your mentors would be able to handhold you and take you forward. That's my 2 bits on this question. Hope I, though a long answer, was able to answer and give inputs on both mentee-mentor relationship, because that's a crucial thing. It has to be, it has to be a chemistry. It has to be a chemistry which is there. And of course, I understand, because a single mentor will not be knowing everything. So we would require, people from different streams to help and mentor you, right? Probably I may not be the best person to mentor you about the income tax rules or the financial statements, which are also very important, by the way, for entrepreneurs. They should be able to create a business plan. They should be able to meet all the compliances of the statutory bodies, etc. So it has to be in that fashion itself. Thanks.
Right, sir. Right, sir. So I hope if there are no further questions, sir, once again, I want to thank you from our Innovation Foundation. And thanks a lot, sir, for the insights you have shared with us. Everything, all the points, line by line, it was actually pragmatic. And those who really want to have their startup in the heuristic way, I'm 100% sure that today's this session is going to be helpful to all of them. So once again, sir, thanks a lot, sir.
My pleasure, and all the very best to all the young people over here, and all the best. I hope we are able to hear about your endeavors and your successful endeavors very soon. All the very best.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Rahul, do we have our another speaker with us?
Sir, let me check, sir. Sir, I'm not able to see him as of now.
Dr. Arora, in case any of the participants send you any questions later on also, please feel free to send them to me and I'll be happy to revert them.
Sure, sir. Thanks a lot, sir. I will be sharing your email ID also.
Sure. My pleasure.
Our pleasure, sir.
Sir, sir has joined. Sandeep Ghai sir has joined, sir.
Rahul, please make him as a co-host.
Yes, sir. Sir made him. I think network is slow at other end.
So, dear participants, I hope this session was really useful to all of you. Means these type of small things this is also very important, that how to have an problem, how to understand a problem, how to understand whether it is an opportunity or not. And if you recognize that this is an opportunity, whether you are able, you are capable, you along with your team.
Beyond compensation, how do you actually create a kind of environment where people feel free and feel part of the entire ecosystem and feel part of the mission that has been set out for? So always, anybody and everybody on this call essentially who's got that idea, who wants to build a startup, ensure that you're investing enough in people, because that's where the value will get generated. Value is not by the business idea alone. Okay. I want to talk a bit about the macro environment that is around us. And this is where we'll spend some 5-10 minutes today. And I think very critical to understand, how does the entire startup culture come into picture and where are we all heading? The first foremost change, or the macro environment that we're talking about, is the technology advancement. Okay. 5 years back or 7 years back, technology used to reinvent itself every 2 years. The time reduced to 6 months, then it reduced to 3 months, then it reduced to 18 days, and that's where technology is today. Every day you see a new innovation which actually hampers the way we think, disrupts the way we live, and also ensures that it's also future driving the way we want to live in future. So a lot of technology advancement has actually creeped into our own living world. We cannot imagine a life without internet. I remember the entire last year, I'm sure that most of us were working from home, big corporate essentially working from home. I'm still working from home, but I cannot imagine a single day without internet. It is just so tough, right? From booking a cab to ordering food to working, essentially everything has become so advanced. And all of this has happened in the last 5 years. Things have moved. uh, there have been platonic shifts around us, essentially. The way we think now, we can't even think of anything beyond technology. For everything, we try and see, hey, is there a better way of achieving what I want to achieve? So that's how technology is disrupting the things around us. What does it do to our workforce? If you see a lot of traditional workforce that doesn't exist in the environment today, we've been talking about Gen Zs and we've been talking about millennials. Okay, that's the new workforce. They think very differently. Like our granddads and dad used to have a lot of loyalty towards organizations that they used to work with. It is changing. We used to have those long-term service awards of 15 years, 25 years. Right now, the long-term service is 3 years, right? So that's how people are changing. That's how the nuances are changing. Where people would just hear what the bosses have to say to now say, hey, this is the right way of doing it. People are talking to the bosses in a very different language. There's no boss or a subordinate relationship anymore. It's a bunch of colleagues who are working towards the mission of an organization or trying to achieve your dream. Okay, that's how the change in demographics have come to be. What does it mean from a skill set perspective? The skills of the past are not utilized today. The behaviors of the past have changed today. There is a kind of an augmentation in the behaviors that used to exist. But the principles and the values are still core to every organization. Okay, the culture is still core to every organization. While the working styles would have changed to say, hey, I work 18 hours a day and I do whatever my boss says, to say I work 12 hours a day, I try and create some balance between my family and my work routine. This is where our granddads and our dads were. But today I say, hey, I have a social life which is equally important as compared to my work. Okay. Which means that from a human capital experience perspective, the policies and the processes have to change. And that is what is changing. And we'll talk a bit about how the new age HR policies look like. We've never talked about donating leaves in the past, but a lot of companies have started donating leave policy where people can pool leaves and give it to somebody who needs it. Okay, we've never talked about rewarding people through vacations essentially, or through L&D coins, but that is what is happening. So it's a very different ball game in terms of creating that employee experience. The voices around diversity inclusion were never so strong earlier, but now we have realized that the more the number of diversity, the higher the diversity, greater the number of ideas, better strategy we would have as an organization. So the talent or the technology advancement has led to a shift in the way that talent works today. And then let's talk about what is the shift from a global economic power. All of these scenarios are changing rapidly. If you see, a large chunk of startups or new age organizations, essentially, where the shift of power is happening, it's not right there, but it's still happening, are the developing countries. Okay. There's a huge shift. The seat of power that used to sit in 5 nations across the world is spread now across 120 nations. Okay. That's where a major chunk is. Now, what actually happens when the shift of power or the economic power happens? India, comparative to other nations, still has a highly versatile, highly agile, educated young workforce, which means our needs and our ability to shift that power will be much more greater. And that is what is happening. We're relying on a huge domestic consumption, and at the same time, we're relying on the huge technology investment that this country can produce for the world. Okay, and of course, we're competing against some of those new age developing economies. We're competing against China as a big time, Vietnam, Cambodia, Philippines, and all of these are also coming up as nations that can actually produce a lot of economic viable products for the entire globe. Okay, and the last important macro environment that actually shapes the way we would think and the way we would uh, run ourselves is the resource scarcity. Okay, while the entire world is talking about, say, climate change, but when we come down to resource scarcity, it actually impacts everything that we do, right from scarcity of fossil fuels, scarcity of the way we work, and that's where the technology advancement is helping. So it's a circle, and that's where some of the things are changing around us. Scarcity of people, the workforce, the skill set. Okay, and that's where organizations are mandated to think differently. That's where startups have found the gaps that they want to plug in. So if you see, each of these 4 aspects of the macro environment is where a lot of thinking, a lot of ideas are getting generated, is where the startups essentially are finding their way or segueing into it to just say, hey, here's the gap, and I want to plug that gap. I want to do something in, say, carbon footprint across the world. So there are startups that are dealing with, say, how do you manage the carbon footprint of the world? There are startups that are dealing with, say, garbage management because it's a huge problem. It's resulting in a certain set of scarcity around the world or a huge problem to deal with. Education. So I found problems or gaps in the education system. The traditional education system is not helping me. The resources are scarce. I do not get so many teachers. I do not have the infrastructure. So maybe education is what I want to get into. So if you see, and we always say necessity is the mother of invention, but you see that's where startups are betting big, essentially. Okay, defining the gaps, creating an idea, using the technology advancement, the new age millennials, and going after it. Okay. Any questions so far? This is where it is macro right now and will boil down to how it impacts at an organization level and then at an individual level. Okay, let's move ahead. Let's move ahead. What is a startup environment? I think we all know about it. A startup environment is, as I said, very, very highly fast paced. It is, one second, agile, it is nimble, unstructured. You don't have structures in place. It's a bunch of people working together to create something. It's about chasing one person's dream. There is an idea that one person or a group of friends, 2 or 3 people who generate it. And then you have to build a team essentially to be able to chase what has been dreamed and create a reality around it. And it's very young and dynamic leadership. At times, so young that they only know about what they're good at. They know their dream, they know the technology that they need to work with, but the entire ecosystem, they're still not aware. Okay, so this is the startup environment where agility, traditional way of thinking, that's the first paradox that you have to uh, essentially work with. And let me just get to that slide. Okay. Productivity versus employee experience, because we're talking about how to generate the maximum from our employees but still be able to give them the kind of experience. And I'm sure that most of you are aware of how you work in a startup. Essentially, it's 12 hours, 18 hours, sometimes 24 hours. I've seen my friends working in offices 2 days because it's just a dream that they're chasing, essentially, to create a product or a service which can just disrupt the market in a big way. Okay. And then employee experience goes for a toss. Because if you were to scale up a startup, you can't have all of them with a single mindset of chasing a dream. You will work with a variety of people with a variety of needs and hence a variety of experiences. And that's the first paradox that we deal with in a startup environment. The second paradox that we deal with in a startup environment is the traditional human capital management versus the new age talent. The new age talent, as I said, is very, very different. It is millennials, it is Gen Zs. They're talking about work and social life in the same tandem, in the same breath. Okay. They say, hey, I will do whatever you're asking me to do in the most productive way, but I have a life which I need to go for vacations. I have to spend time with my friends. I have to have certain evenings to myself. And that's where the talent management becomes very, very critical. And we'll talk about how do we do it. Once you've achieved in terms of the kind of talent that you want to get in the organization, it's about the culture that you want to maintain. And can the culture be as disruptive as possible? No, there are certain values that even startups have to define, okay, which will become the DNA of the organization. And that is one of the major, major challenges of any human capital team or a leader in case of a startup. Structured versus unstructured decision making. In a startup, there's nothing which is structured to start with, okay? It's a bunch of ideas coming together. It's hit and trial, working and not working. There is one man who's calling the shots. Everybody else just follows. There are investors that you go to because funding is a major thing that you initially start with, essentially, even when it's in an idea stage. Okay, and you try and get more investors. So that's where all of the decisions actually boil down to. Everything else takes a back seat. So that's another paradox. Essentially, how do I convert my unstructured decision making into a more structured decision making through a strong people and leadership policies or human capital policies? And finally, technology versus personal touch. Finally, the technology versus personal touch. Okay, when you try and make your people super productive, you're using and they're coding every day, they're creating something new every day. Are you losing that personal touch with your employees, which is very, very critical? While we say that millennials are more about themselves, they think very differently, but we all are humans at the end of the day, and we all admire that personal touch, that empathy, that sympathy at times, the emotional values that we are attached with. So these are certain paradoxes. The question is, how do you deal with them? What do you want to do with them? Let's tackle the first one, very, very critical, employee experiences versus productivity. In a sense, any startup organization in the world talks about chasing a dream. As I said, it's a dream that everybody is chasing, maybe a single person's dream or a group of friends' dreams, which means I might not have a very fancy office. I might have only a garage to work in, okay, a laptop to work with some internet speed and some coding experience. But I'm just working to make a product which will disrupt the market. Where is the experience that other people get working in a large organization? They'll work in an air conditioned office, they've got very fancy seats. It's they boast about the office environment, the internal cafeterias, how massive it is, or the kind of the basketball courts or the volleyball courts that offices have today, or the wellness programs that run in offices. None of these are available. So how do you keep these people motivated? And that's the question I got. I think Dr. Arora also talked about it, and there was a lady who talked about it. How do we reward people? Reward is not just about compensating. Okay, it is not. Compensation is basically, if you say the definition of compensation, compensation is something that you give to your employees to compensate for work that they do. It is as simple as that. Okay, how do you reward people is very, very different. How do you create those experiences for people is very, very different. So how do you reward people working in a startup environment? I think, and I don't know how many of have heard about Netflix story in terms of how they manage the HR. It's very different because they talk about building a team, which is where everybody is super proficient. Okay. But given the kind of experiences that they haven't heard of, people can take vacation whenever they want to, provided they're doing what they're supposed to do. It is as simple as that. Okay. They have a philosophy of paying whatever you want We will pay you, but you have to give us back in terms of what we need as an organization. So the policies are changing. It's not as structured or as traditional the way they were in terms of, hey, I will pay you at the median of the market or a P66 or a P75 of the market. That doesn't work anymore because we've realized that reward for each individual is different. Okay, for some people it is compensation, for some people it is benefits, for some people it is learning and development, for some people it is career opportunities. All right. So the way you define your reward philosophy has to anchor on these four pillars. How do I really create value? Because I might not have enough funds to pay. And that was the question coming my way. I don't have so much funds to pay to people. I think when you don't have funds to pay, the first thing that any leader in a startup or a human capital startup has to do is to start building a team. While you start building the team, the first stance you take is to hire people who are equally motivated to change the world, people who have a stake in what you've dreamt of as a leader of that startup, people who feel connected with the mission, the way you've articulated that mission for yourself. Because what we've realized is the new age millennial, they work for an organization not just for money, but they work for an organization for the value that the mission creates for themselves. They have to relate themselves to the mission or the vision of the organization. So the idea is to be able to create that team, be assured that you are selling the mission and the vision to those people in entirety. They know exactly where you want to impact and how do you want to impact. Okay. While from a compensation perspective, I agree. Somebody said, hey, do we give ESOPs? Yes, why not? Because that's the way of building value for your employees, because this value will multiply as the organization grows. And we've seen those success stories across. Flipkart, amazing success story that happened. WhatsApp, amazing success story that happened when Facebook bought them. Okay. So you created value for your employees for the initial sweat that they've given you through those ESOPs or shares or stocks or however you want to call it. But the idea is you have to make it big as a leader. You have to have vested interest in chasing your own dream. And then you ensure that everybody is along with you and you take them along. You provide them the kind of work that they want to do, and you provide them the kind of experiences. So you have to have a very balanced approach there. The second paradox is traditional human capital management versus the new age talent. As I said, the policies are undergoing changes today. We've never been so vocal about, say, diversity and inclusion as we are now. And that's where a lot of your insurance policies are changing. A lot of your maternity policies are changing. You're providing better maternity leaves to your employees these days. You value their commitment to the organization. So which is very different from how it used to be earlier. You're talking about leave pools. You're talking about sabbaticals to even find a new job. There are organizations who are talking about, hey, can I give sabbatical to my employee to just go and explore and find a new job? And I'm sure that they will never leave me now because I've created that kind of an experience for them. So I think that's the second paradox. We're talking about the new age talent requirements and the way the human capital management is happening. There's also a huge difference in the way human capital itself will work in the startups, and we'll talk a bit more about it when we come to that one. Talent versus culture, the third paradox. Let's look at the startup journey, right from, say, the idea, incubation, maturity, and then becoming a lot more static in nature, and then becoming a big organization. The kind of people who work with you when you start a startup are very different. These are the people who are like-minded, people easy to attract when you're building that team. You will find only people that are more critical to join you at that juncture than in a maturity stage. So a lot of these come together as a bunch of, they become like a family working together, 10, 15 people working small rooms, creating something big, and then they grow from there. When the growth happens, it's like a mushroom growing essentially. There's no culture per se. Okay. But once you start in the incubation stage and you move towards maturity, it is very important for a startup essentially to start defining the values that they stand by, the values that they need to be known for. It could be as simple as performance, or it could be as simple as integrity, right? It could be as simple as ambiguity, comfort. But you need to define the culture that you want your organization to be. For example, we talked about Netflix a bit. The culture clearly says it is a high performing culture, which means that even if you are a plus employee with me today, but tomorrow I might not need your skill, I will have a conversation and let you go. That's how they work with. Okay, that's the culture that they've built and they stand by it. It's a high performing culture. A less performance will never be tolerated in the organization. That's what Reed Hastings have always talked about. Okay. Third paradox. Now coming to the fourth one, structured versus unstructured decision. If you see a lot of startups, and I'm going to talk both technology and personal touch, and we talked about young dynamic leadership in the previous exercise. Everybody looks up to one person in a startup, okay, which is himself or herself really young, somebody who's just started a venture. A lot of decision doesn't go through a very structured way of, having a board approve it and you working with your teams, because everybody is new. Everybody is just as unsure as the leader himself or herself. So there is nothing like a structured decision making. So that's where you start. You start with unstructured decisions, but you move towards a structured way of thinking, if not decision making, as you grow and invest more in your startups. Once you start moving ahead with your funding and you have investors, some of these questions are bound to come your way. Decision making will be a big, big thing. How do I sell my organization or my idea to an investor? Which investor to go with? How much dilution of early stock should happen in the organization? All of these decisions have to be taken. And the only person who has to take the decision is the core team, the first leader who had this idea. So, as I said, everybody is looking to him or her, but he himself or herself is just too young. And that's where a lot of support is needed. And that's where we'll talk a bit about human capital and the new age talent and how do we provide the support. Finally, technology versus personal touch. I think we all know about it. At the end of the day, I made the statement we are all human. While technology advancement, the new age jobs, automation, RPA will change the way we work. We will continue to leverage technology. Technology will lead the way we lead our life. But at the same time, we like that emotional uh, empathy, sympathy, touch as well as we work. And this is one of the core areas where a small startup versus the startup becoming big essentially has to think about. Because with scale, you might tend to lose that personal touch. You're still very, very connected when you're a small team of 5, 7 people working together. But as it grows, the personal touch loses its essence. And of course, you're too dependent on, say, a technology or the automation or processes, to be put in a very, very simple term. Any questions so far? Anything that you need more clarity on? Okay, let's move ahead. Let's look at the challenges. And I think this is where we started. Finding and attracting the right talent is the first challenge that any startup has. Talent is scarce, skill set is scarce. If I were to get a high end coder to work with me today, I need to pay money, which I don't have. So, what will define the right talent for me when I even start working in my startup? Second part, developing people to reach their full potential. I might have hired with A plus skill set, but that A plus becomes irrelevant after 6 months because things are changing around me in a very, very rapid pace. We work in a highly technology advanced world. Okay. So, how do I continue to upskill people, reskill people, cross skill people, and build a talent engine where people feel valued through their learning and development agendas? They feel more marketable at any given point in time, and that's how I make them reach their full potential. Improving the employee experience we've talked about in the past. Creating a collaborative work environment, workforce planning, and building the necessary culture. And I think when we talk about startups, all of these are very, very critical elements. These are the challenges that every startup faces today. Let's start with the first one, finding and attracting the right talent. How do you define that right talent for yourself? What do you need? In my way, and the way we've been talking to a couple of startup leaders and the work that I've done with them in the past, I think the first singular lens that a startup has to employ essentially is never go for somebody who's not a high performer or a A plus talent. You're still building a startup. You need people with energy, you need people with intent, and you need people with the right intellect. So do not cut corners when you build your initial team, and that is very, very critical. Okay. Which means if you have to pay them higher, you will have to shed out that kind of money, but sell your vision and mission before you shed that kind of money. Maybe there are people who will be ready to work with you, because that's what drives the experiences and the kind of work that people do. You can also look at defining a different way of contracting with them. You can talk about working, say, 3 days a week, 4 days a week, certain hours a week. You can talk about compensation versus bonus versus stocks, which is basically talking about your base pay, short term incentives, and long term incentives. You can create benefits that are very, very attractive to such employees without even have to spend a large chunk of money in terms of their salaries. But finding and attracting the right talent is very, very critical, because this will decide the direction in which your organization will move. If you go wrong with people, you will never be able to create that value that you've dreamt of. And that's where we started first. Businesses do not create value, it is the people who do. So make sure that you're surrounded with the right skill set, the right competencies, the right intent, and the right intellect of people to be able to achieve what you want to achieve. Second point is very, very critical, as I said, full potential. And who defines the full potential for anyone? The only thing that defines the full potential is actually a trade-off. It's not a trade-off, actually a balance between where the world is heading towards and where you are. The speed of your own executions versus the speed of what your other competitors are doing will help you define the potential of people that you want to work with. And that's where you're putting programs to ensure that they're upskilling themselves. You enroll them for academies, you enroll them for the kind of courses that they need to do. You enroll them for certain sessions, but ensure that people are upskilling. Otherwise, imagine a leader who's surrounded by people who are highly loyal but do not have a skill. You will never be able to. We are all talking about commercial businesses here. We are not talking about a not for profit. We're talking about profit organizations. We're talking about changing the world. So it has to be very, very different ball game altogether. Employee experience, we talked about creating a collaborative work environment. Very, very critical, because and I want to touch upon two aspects of collaboration here. Imagine building a startup, one leader, 3, 4 people working together. These know what they do. They're really good at what they do, but they don't have networks. They collaborate only internally right now, but they don't collaborate externally. And if I relate this point to point number one, when you try and build your team, do not just hire your own replicas. Do not hire your own shadows in the organization. Okay, hire people who will help you create those networks, who will help you collaborate with the macro environment, the external world, in a better way, who will help you instinct the right culture within your own organization. And sometimes it is critical to hire a specialist to do all of this work for you. And that's where human capital becomes very, very critical, because they'll help you create that culture, they'll help you build that collaborative environment, they'll help you create those value system for the organization, help you with workforce planning. How many people do I need if I were to grow at X rate versus 2X versus 10X? Okay, how do I upskill my talent? Because that's where human capital becomes very, very critical, because they will help you build a talent engine in the organization, which is more sustainable as you think today. Okay. It's a very interesting study that I found in one of the research done by PwC. I'm sure that everybody knows about PwC. They've talked about 4 aspects or 4 worlds of work in 2030, and I could relate it back to how the startup works essentially. It's a If you see, these are 4 quadrants. They're talking about the red world innovation companies. They're talking about the orange world or yellow world companies. They're talking about the green world companies, and they're talking about the blue world companies. Okay. A lot of us actually know about the blue world companies. These are large corporates that we all work with essentially after our education, or we want to work with. And we often talk about, hey, let me work with, say, Apple or a Google or a Amazon. These are big blue world corporates that we talk about. Okay, much bigger, diversified, have loads of money to invest in various areas, uh, do some sort of a societal responsibilities as part of their CSR, but it's basically highly capitalist in nature. Okay, where huge businesses integrate to create a huge corporate. That's the blue world corporate that we're talking about. Uh, Moving to the other side, so if I move from, say, integration to fragmentation on the y-axis, okay, moving on to the other side is fragmentation. Smaller organizations, essentially highly fragmented businesses, but highly nimble and agile. If I go towards right, I'm talking about individualism. And if I go towards left, I'm talking about collectivism. Okay. Let's talk about fragmentation and individualism first, which is my quadrant here. First quadrant, the red world. The red world essentially is talking about the new age technology. It is talking about innovation. It is talking about influencers. It is talking about specialists, neat uh, or very niche areas to work with, where one individual creates an idea, has a very fragmented business, small businesses, highly agile, nimble. The realities are very different. The way you would manage such talent is very different. Okay, the way you would motivate them is very different. Okay, because it is the nature of work that will become a motivator for them, and then you show them value through different ways and create that value for them. If I move towards the second quadrant, where I'm talking about, say, collectivism and fragmentation, the first kind of organization that talked about here is basically the orange world or the yellow world, the way PwC research defined it. This is basically where we're talking about society and community first. That's how the missions are set for these organizations. A lot of startups deal with a lot of NGOs these days. They deal with healthcare as a mission these days. They deal with eradicating poverty as a mission these days. Okay, and that's where the startups are also working. So this is where the motivation comes from. If you know Maslow's hierarchy, it is the satisfaction where it is coming from a lot of societal responsibilities, creating better communities around us, creating workers guild. Okay, they're talking about health, they're talking about poverty, as I say, they're talking about making people lead better life essentially. So the meaning and the relevance comes from somewhere else. Okay, it comes from your intrinsic uh, need to service the society. The green world organizations, as the research has defined, is basically talking about making this world a better place. They're talking about sustainability, they're talking about climate, they're talking about minimum disruption to the ecosystem around us, but creating value for the masses in a very different way. And hence the motivators are very different. So it is a collective thought, and hence it is collectivism. And it is highly integrated because a lot of people need to come together to be able to achieve something like this. In terms of a green world. And fourth, of course, we all know it, the blue world, which is the king, and that's where we live in. Now, imagine a startup dealing with any of these four areas. Okay, a startup could be actually three, if not fourth one, because what we are saying is a large organization itself starts talking about a startup culture. So a big corporate are talking about smaller teams within them. So let's just leave that out for now. But if I talk about the red world, the orange world, and the green world, the talent needs are different, the leadership thoughts are different, the individualism versus collectivism, fragmentation versus integration actually plays a role in the way you'd manage your talent. So what the point I'm trying to make here is, whatever is your idea, the mission, the vision, try and identify where you want to be. That's the first question, the goal that you set out for yourself. Try and identify the path that you will take to achieve your goal as the leader of that organization. And then talk about what do you need, because that's the kind of clarity that you need essentially to be able to manage the talent really well. Okay. Something that is, and this is the slide where I would want to end today and then take questions from people. Organizations that we talk about today, be it the red world or the green world, the orange world or the blue world, are highly progressive, competitive in nature. Everybody's talking about automation. Everybody's talking about technology advancement. Everybody's talking about not technology helping the business, but business being led by technology these days. Okay, that's how the world has changed around us. The only thing that you as a leader for a small scale startup or a middle age maturing startup has to think, never ever to think about protecting people's job. The question is to protect people themselves. Okay. This is where you as a leader create a difference. We've talked about how can we retain people through better compensation, but maybe sometimes just the adaptability, the agility, the learning environment that you need. Because as soon as you start upskilling people, they start realizing their value themselves and they will never leave you. A lot of organizations, and I really admire some of these organizations. For example, Infosys is an organization that might not be paying you that well, But people don't leave that organization because they are a good learning ground. They continue to upskill their people, make them better every single day. TCS, a huge organization with multiple startups inside it. The way they're disrupting the entire digital mindset or the digital culture around the world is amazing. Amazing story. But what they're doing, they're actually upskilling their people in thousands every year. So if you continue to think about protecting jobs, you will never be able to do anything as a leader. Start protecting your people. Take decisions which are helping people to protect their jobs. And that's where you create a value as a leader of a startup. And that thinking has to start from day one itself. You even generate an idea, work with your investors, and create that A team for yourself to work with. So that was my parting thought today, but I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
Yeah, participants, if you have any question, please feel free to ask. You can unmute yourself by yourself, or you can also type your question in the chat box. After that, we will also have a group photograph. Yeah, any
I know it was
questions
a
from the
long spiel.
participants?
I just hope I haven't made people sleep.
No, no.
Sure, sir. I agree with you that making the people more skilled and have the way out, because if they go with our what do you call the policies, or they like the upskilling structure of our company, they'll be binded by us, not for like only for funds or only for money. They'll be valuing our values also. Thank you so much, sir, for that.
So Shrikant sir has joined.
I request all the participants, please switch on your cameras.
There's a question in the chat that says, who should be investing? Is it the company or the employee themselves? A great question, actually. The question is, who is in charge of your career? Is it the organization or you yourself? Okay, and that's where the answer is. Each individual himself or herself is in charge of the career. Okay, which means I should have an appetite to upskill and reskill myself. The opportunities might be provided by the organization, which is a fair ask because it's a give and take relationship between an organization and an employee, right? So unless you upskill yourself or reskill yourself, you will not be able to as productive as the organization needs you to be. It's a give and take. Both create value out of it. But if I were to ask this question honestly, the onus lies on the employee himself or herself. This is where the need essentially initiates, and then they reach out to the company, say, hey, this is what I want to do. Can you help me out? Or do you have an avenue where I can go and participate? Okay, I hope that answers the question.
I request all the participants to kindly switch on their cameras.
Good evening, sir. How are you?
I am
Nice
good.
to
I
see
am
you.
doing.
That question was
And that will become a lot of administrative work in our.
First and then after to Sandeep Bhaiji.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thanks a lot for mentoring our incubatees and being a women university. You know, lots and lots of mentorship. It is always required from all the angles. As Shrikant sir was saying, that lots many mentors you require in your journey of entrepreneurs, starting from technical entrepreneur, technical mentorship, then business mentorship, strategic mentorship or even in the different function areas. So thanks, sir, joining us on Sunday.
Thank
Thanks
you
to
for
the
inviting.
thanks to all the participants also. Please join us again on 6th of February. On 6th of February, we are going to have two mentors again with us, one from NISPERT and another one from NIMSME. And NISPERT is from the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, and NIMSME is National Institute of Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises. Okay, then I hope we will be meeting again on 6th of February. And thanks, and be connected. And before that also, we are going to have a CO meet also. It is scheduled on 30th of this
When
month only. So please join that too if you have not registered yourself. Thanks again to all of you. Thanks.
Thanks and all the best.
thank you, sir.